Hello and welcome to Tiny Desk Knitting with Emma. This is episode 100, which is crazy. So I have released episodes basically weekly since I started, although for like the first 6 or 7 months it was not weekly. It was just like a bunch at a time, and then I would like take a break and then I would like do some more. But since I would say August, September of 2020, it's been regular almost every week, except like a couple of weeks where I've taken a week off. So it has been almost exactly 2 years since I started this channel, because I did start it in February of 2021. So that's kind of nuts. I did not know what would happen to this channel when I started. I didn't know how it would grow. I didn't anticipate like any of that. I was just kind of like, let's put something out there into the world and see what happens. And I started this because I needed something to do when the kids I nannied were at school, basically. So that was, I was just like, I need something to do with my brain that's like more than sitting around knitting. I need to do something with this because I really enjoyed my year being a nanny. It was kind of like it was like a gap year, you're not doing, for me, working in higher education, basically. It was fun. It was a fun year. I really enjoyed living with the kids and getting to watch them grow up and I still get to watch them grow up because they live 45 minutes down the street. Sorry for the interruption. I needed to sneeze. But yeah, it's been I really started this. If you go back, or you've been with me for a long time, or you've gone back to look, you would see that I started this as a channel for talking about Fair Isle techniques and Fair Isle information and stuff about Shetland knitting, because I was really into Fair Isle knitting at the time. So I'm just playing with this slightly felted bit of Cheviot fiber that's here. This is some foreshadowing for the spinning portion of this episode. It's pretty fun. I was doing a lot, my videos were a lot shorter. There was a lot more information. They were more kind of explaining something or talking about one Fair Isle piece or whatever. And then, I got into other things, knitted a lot of other stuff. And so now it's just kind of I don't know, it's what I'm knitting, it's what I'm spinning, what I'm dyeing, what I'm working on, all sorts of things, projects, life stuff, all sorts of things. It's really kind of settled into something that was more sustainable for me, I guess. So thank you to all these people, amazing people who have been with me at any point on this journey. And I'm very excited to see where it goes in the next 100 episodes. It's kind of wild to think that there might be another 100 episodes of this, and to think how much my internet footprint is gonna then expand by another 100 episodes of me talking about random yarn stuff. So that's fun. So for my 100th episode, I decided to collect some of the questions that I've gotten recently. So sometimes people write questions in the comments to me, and sometimes they email me, and I try to answer them, but oftentimes I just forget, because of course I do. I'm just kind of all over the place because I don't usually write things down. And I decided that I would like to make this a more regular thing. So I would like to have a segment at the beginning of every episode on inbox, what if people asked me in the past week. And it would be if you want to send in a question or you're wondering about something, please feel free to either write it in the comments or you can email me, which my email is barnabyknits@gmail.com, but it's also in the description box. I tried to start using the cards, which were really cool and helpful, except that they only let me do 5 per episode. So now I can't do that anymore. For a few important things, I'll use cards, but I don't even know if they worked in the last one. They worked in this short video I made about my socks a week and a half ago, but I'm not sure if they actually worked for for last week's video. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. I thought that was a really helpful thing, and then it turned out that I just couldn't make it work. But hopefully the 5 cards I tried to put in the last episode actually did work, and you were able to click on some of those links. So I'm still playing with this fiber because my hands, this is why I knit. People are like, why do you knit? And I'm like, well, I like to make stuff, but also I'm really fidgety. So I need to be like, my hands have to be busy if I'm not, all the time. So yeah, okay. So the first thing I'm going to do today is answer a few questions, and they're interesting questions. So then I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I finished this week. I actually finished 2 things this week. I'm not really going to talk about whips because these were like the only 2 things I worked on all week. And then but I have some spinning stuff to share. So the first question that someone asked was whether I could explain whether it was okay to use superwash and non-superwash yarn together in a project. So I'm going to talk about using superwash and non-superwash yarn together in different types of projects. So the categories I came up with for this were stranded, mosaic, and striped. So I think that, like, let's say you were to use just an example that like a lot of people would probably have used or have seen people use. Let's talk about the collaboration that Andrea Mowry has with Magpie and Spin Cycle, for instance. So Andrea Mowry designs a lot of patterns in yarn that comes from Magpie and Spin Cycle together. She always does her Rhinebeck sweater with Magpie and Spin Cycle. Some of Magpie's yarns are superwash, like the dyed in the skein that they do now for to go with dyed in the wool. So dyed in the wool is like a handspun mimicking yarn, and dyed in the skein is the same yarn, but it's dyed by Magpie, and it's not all handspunny. It's just like tonal solid colors. So dyed in the wool is superwash merino yarn. It is superwash wool. But Magpie's like nest worsted, nest sport, those are not superwash. Those are untreated Corriedale. So they're dyed probably in the wool and then they're spun, but they're not, they might be dyed after they're spun, which doesn't matter. They're not superwash treated. So, and Andrea Mowry uses both of those yarns in a lot of her patterns. Generally what I would say is if you're doing like a yoke, let's say you're doing color work, even in a yoke, regardless. So superwash yarn, the concern here is that superwash yarn will stretch and grow and block bigger than it, like you're knitting before blocking, like especially lengthwise, it tends to grow. And non-superwash yarn is less likely to do that. What I find is that actually most yarn does grow a lot if you were knitting it at too loose of a gauge for the needle. So consider like the tightness of your gauge. Like, is that something that you should always swatch. Like if you're swatching and your gauge is not growing that much after washing, that's probably a good indication that you're knitting at a tight enough gauge that it's not going to grow. But we don't always want to knit at a tight gauge. So like for instance, oh my gosh, though, merino DK, like if you get like a superwash treated merino DK, just like from a hand dyer or like, I don't know, from Barocco or something, wow, that, if you don't knit it at a tight enough gauge, it grows inches and inches and inches, like vertically after you wash it. I have been shocked. So finding a small enough needle is important. But if you're knitting in color work, there are floats. The floats are causing your knitting to be less stretchy. And the less give the knitting has, the less likely it is to stretch either way. So if you're using the yarn together in color work, you're probably going to be fine. Even if it's in it, whether it's in a yoke or it's all over color work or whatever, you're probably going to be okay. If you're using like, let's say you're using non-superwash wool for the color work contrasting color in the yoke, and then the rest of the sweater is superwash, the rest of the sweater might grow vertically or horizontally, honestly, depending on your gauge. But that section would be less likely to expand. Although, yeah, I feel like most people, like if you were using the example that I gave, I feel like it would be more likely that people would be using a superwash color for the contrasting color and then like a non-superwash yarn for the main body of the sweater, and you'd have less trouble with that way. In mosaic knitting, so this is an example of mosaic knitting, this is not superwash and non-superwash. All of the yarns in this are non-superwash because I used a white yarn that's just like Peruvian Highland sport weight wool for the white blips, and then all the rest of it's hand spun, and that's non-superwash. This is the Shifty by Andrea Mowry, and she does have a Shifty cardigan now. I think with mosaic, again, like I think it would depend on which yarn was used for what. Like if you were using superwash yarn as the blips here, I think that would probably be less of an issue, because like they're kind of getting trapped, you're floating them, there's all sorts of things that are like kind of securing them in place a little bit better. Whereas if you were to use like the non-superwash yarn as the blips and the background yarn as the superwash yarn, that might be a little bit more sketchy. Like that, you might get some growth there. I think it's going to depend. But the last one is stripes, and I think stripes is where you would see the biggest difference. Again, gauge is going to matter here, because if your gauge is tight enough, the superwash yarn probably won't grow very much, but that's where you might see a difference. So like if you were knitting stripes and the stripes were the same width before you blocked, and one of the stripes or some of the stripes were superwash wool and some of them were non-superwash wool, that might be where you see a difference, like in the length of the stripes after you block, because superwash yarn again just grows vertically a lot. So horizontally, I'm gonna posit that you would have less of a problem, because sometimes it does grow horizontally, but it's easier to kind of like zhuzh it in a little bit if you're blocking it to be like the same width. You can use combs or whatever. Vertically, that's not as easy, especially if you're working with a lot of little stripes. So I would say that's where you should be the most careful. Block a swatch. If the superwash yarn stripes are like significantly wider, what I would do is just do fewer repeats and like keep making swatches and blocking them until you have stripes that like look even to you. And then that's your sequence. Like maybe that's 6 stripes of the non-superwash and 4 stripes of the superwash, or whatever it is. But yeah, I think you should always make a swatch and block it if you're not sure what's going to happen to the yarn that way. So yeah, that's that question. That was kind of a long answer, but that's fine. My next question is, somebody asked me about ChiaoGoo mini sets. They said, what's the difference and how do I choose which set I want? So I've got my 2 ChiaoGoo mini sets here. I don't have the larger one because I don't really use needles of the size 10 to 9 plus, which I think that set is yellow. So I have the red one, which is the minis, the super small ones. And then I have the blue set, which is sizes 4 through 8. So this is 0 through 3, and this is 4 through 8. And I'm going to take out the mini ones so you can see them. So this set comes with, this is like T-pins for tightening the cables to the needles. It comes with the stoppers, and it comes with stitch markers. It comes with your cords, 3 cords here. So the cords create different lengths of needle. So you can go, so the 5-inch cord can make, the smallest it could make is a 9-inch, because you have 2 sets, there's 2 sets of needles in each size. There's a 2-inch and a 3-inch tip. So you can make 5 plus 2 or plus 3, or yeah, 5 plus 4 or 5 plus 6, 6 plus 4 or 6, or yeah, 6 plus 4 or 6 plus 6, and then 8 plus 4 or 8 plus 6 as your inches. So you can go up to a 14-inch and as small as a 9-inch right here. Yeah, so here's what it looks like. Whoa. In the little set. So you've got 0 through 3. These are the 2-inch tips down here. I'll take one out so you can see. Very teeny. I do not use the 2-inch tips. I wish you could get I would prefer to have a 3-inch set for everything, but they don't make that. You can get these a la carte though now, and then you can get 3-inch tips. So that's what the minis are like. And you can use these for small circumferences of any kind. So, oh, it also comes with a little gauge ruler. Although with ChiaoGoo needles, you don't need this, because unless you have poor eyesight, which is, you might need this, because the ChiaoGoo sizes are all laser printed on the needles and on the tips, and on the mini tips or any kind of interchangeable tips, it's printed on both tips. If you have a fixed set, it's only printed on one tip. So you'd have to sometimes check both to find the size you're looking for. So the mini set, the tiny ones, sorry, the 0 through 3 mini set, I should say, the minis, the cords themselves are very thin. They're thinner than normal ChiaoGoo cords if you get them fixed, even if you get like all the way down to a size 1. So sometimes they can be a little bit more finicky. The blue ones don't have that problem. The cords, the cables are sort of the regular same, like the same like thickness, and like the little spot where you screw the needle tips in, like similarly, you know, it's like pretty sturdy. So I find that these are easier to use than the mini ones. I will still use the mini ones sometimes. Mostly I use these for sleeves. I don't knit socks on 9-inch circulars, but if you like to knit socks on 9-inch circulars, this one's a good set, because that is gonna give you the like the 9-inch circular needle that you want in a variety of sizes. So I think you can even get smaller ones. I don't know if you get smaller ones for the mini like the needle tips, but you can definitely, they go down to like a 000 if you get the super small ones for the interchangeables in the 4 and 5-inch. So anyway, I like them for sleeves a lot. I use them like actually for both top down and bottom up, I tend to use them for sleeves. If I'm starting a sweater top down, I will usually start on a 16-inch, and until I can absolutely not do that anymore, I will continue knitting on the 16-inch, and once it gets too small, then I'll switch to the minis, and I'll use like a 12-inch mini. If I can get away with that, that's usually helpful. Usually 12 inches will get me all the way to the end of the sleeve, and then I'll usually do magic loop for the ribbing just because it's simpler. I don't want to switch like to another smaller tip. But yeah, I do use them a lot for sleeves. They're not cheap though. This like a set of these is like over $100 because there's so many needle tips in there. But you can get, you can get like more cords. You can get replacement tips if you lose a set, anything like that. So that's good. Today I'm drinking Earl Grey. Because I'm recording this on Monday morning. It's actually President's Day, but I do not have the day off because the school does not have the day off. We get President's Day off on like December 28th. It's like a fake holiday. Like they move it to the week between Christmas and New Year's, so they have like a reason to close the university during Christmas and New Year's. So any kind of Mondays that they don't think the students should have their semester interrupted for, they give us those days off between Christmas and New Year's. So President's Day, Veterans Day, Columbus Day, and Election Day, which is not usually a Monday, but like, I just do not understand. Like, the point of giving someone Election Day off is so they can vote. You cannot vote a month and a half after Election Day when we get that day off on December 29th or something like that. So like, that to me is like really wild that that's how they justify that specific day being off. I'm like, yeah, no, you can't give someone a floating holiday that's a month and a half after they actually have to do something on that holiday. It's not a holiday, it's just a day that should be a day off so that everyone can go frickin' vote. But that's, it's how they have to justify it legally. That's fine. I'll take the day off. Okay, the next question is about gusset interruption with self-striping socks. So actually a lot of people have asked me this question. When you knit with self-striping sock yarn, the stripe is obviously a fixed amount of yards. There are a variety of different ways to knit socks, but my preferred method of knitting socks is to knit socks with a heel flap and gusset. So I'm going to show you this sock. This is one of my FOs, so we're going to get into FOs a little early. This is one of my Kitty Bennett socks, which is the next sock pattern that I'll be releasing. This sock, like all the socks I design, almost, has a heel flap and gusset. So that means you knit the leg, and when you get to the heel, you knit only on the back needle, because I knit these magic loop. On the back needle, you knit a heel flap. It's a slip stitch heel flap. So you like slip one, knit one, slip one, knit one all the way across, then you purl back. Slip one, knit one again until you have a square, like you've done like 15 rows of this. Then you do a heel turn. I'll take this off the blocker so you can see what it looks like. The heel turn is here, and it's a little short row thing that basically makes it so that it anatomically fits your heel, like it's like rounded like a heel. And then when you finish that, you knit across those stitches here, and then you pick up the stitches along the side of the heel flap. So that would be here. Then you're back at or I guess it would be this side, whatever. Then you're back at the beginning of the round. Then you knit across the top needle. And then when you get back here, you pick up the stitches on this side of the heel flap. So then you have a bunch more stitches than you started with. And you do this thing called the gusset, where you can see here, I'm decreasing stitches here along a period of about 20 rounds where I am decreasing the bottom needle stitches back to the original number. This is like a preferred method of knitting socks for a lot of people, not everyone, because this seems to fit the human ankle and foot the best. It is accommodating for your ankle and your heel. So there's less pressure being put on those stitches and you're less likely to wear through. However, if you use self-striping yarn, what happens is that you have a much longer round when you get to the gusset. So like if I have 64 stitches in my sock, I might have like 90 stitches in my sock at the time that I've picked up all these stitches. So that's a significant number. That means your self-striping stripes are gonna get thinner around the gusset, and then they're gonna get slightly thicker, and then maybe by like stripe 3 or 4, you'll be, depending on how wide your stripes are, you'll be back to normal. A lot of people don't like that. They're trying to avoid this problem of having their stripes not be the same width across the top of their sock when they're working on the gusset. You can't avoid that if you knit a heel flap and gusset with self-striping sock yarn. Short answer, you cannot avoid it. What you can do is you can knit a short row heel. And that is what I almost always do, unless I'm knitting like a DK self-striping socks and it's like marled with white and you can't even see it. And I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna do a heel flap, no problems. But if you are knitting and you don't like that, here are some options. You can do a shadow wrap heel, you can do a German short row heel, or you can do an afterthought heel. And I'm gonna link tutorials for all those types of heels. I honestly, if I'm knitting self-striping socks, I almost always knit, well, sometimes I knit a shadow wrap heel, which has been popularized in like the last 1.5 years by Denise from Earth Tones Girl, who's amazing. So I'm gonna link her tutorial, and I would definitely recommend checking that out. It's a great heel method. It's just a short row heel method where it's like symmetrical, which is, she said, was what she wanted when she was looking for a short row heel. It's really helpful. It's not very difficult. I actually like getting it done in the middle of the sock to just kind of like negate the problem of having to go back and do the heels later, which I don't always like to do. But I often just do an afterthought heel for ease, because then you can like decide where to place it after the sock is done. So that's also helpful. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, I had to stop it for a second to go and flip my sourdough pancake, which, as people who watch me know, I eat most days. Okay, so the next question that I've had this question a lot too, is what do you do about the jog in Fair Isle knitting? So what these people are asking is basically when you have any kind of knitting with two colors, when you get to the end of a round, if you're knitting in the round, you're gonna have a jog, because knitting is not row and then start another row and like stacked. It's continuously, it's like a slinky. It's not rings that you stack, because we're knitting in like a giant spiral basically. So when you get to the end of the round, you've gone up a little bit. So there will be a jog where you change colors. So I've got a hat here. I'm just gonna try and find the jog so you can see. When it comes to Fair Isle knitting, I think there are some methods for quote unquote dealing with that, but I have never actually tried any. And I find that in most Fair Isle knitting, it's pretty hard to tell. Like, I just had to look hard for this jog, first of all. So here's the jog in this hat. This is the Nighthawk Skull Cap by Wilma Malcolmson. And the jog is here. So yeah, you can sort of see that, but like, unless you're really looking for it, it's not gonna be noticeable. What I would say, you can like look up some methods for not, for avoiding it. I think I've been seeing some posts about that and some chat about that on YouTube lately with some other folks, but I've never tried it. What I would say is that if I can find it and it's like a hat, I just flip the hat over so it's here in the back when I wear it. No problem. Yeah, if I'm knitting a sweater, that's the thing. If you're knitting a garment, how do you deal with it? Okay, so, or like a yoke sweater or something. A yoke sweater, I generally put it at the center back. Sometimes I put it at the back shoulder. A Fair Isle sweater that's knitted from the bottom up, I put on the side, like under the arms. Nobody would see it. If you're knitting a cardigan, it's negated because you usually change rounds in before you start another round, and that's a steek. So the jog's in the middle of the steek, no one's gonna see it. So that's awesome, an awesome idea. But yeah, people are always like, how do you deal with it? How do you avoid it? I don't. If you haven't noticed it on my videos, that's like a testament to the fact that no one will notice it. So I think just kind of like, it's hand knit, like it will have imperfections. Machine made things would have a jog too. Like all things are going to have imperfections. So you just kind of have to, I think, take that as it is. There's not really another way to deal with it. Okay. Another question I've had is, what do you do with yarn after frogging if you want to use that yarn again? So it comes out all squiggly. I would say you can wash it. You can reskein it and wash it, but you have to be really careful if you're going to do that. So to get the kinks out, if you really want to get the kinks out, so that it doesn't look like ramen noodles, you can put it, I mean, if you're a spinner and you have a nitty knotty, that's the easiest way to do it. Like spinners generally have this tool called a nitty knotty in which they wind skeins, like they wind their handspun from a bobbin into a skein, and then they wash it for washing. So that's easy, but you can also use a swift. So I would just tie one end of the yarn to a swift, and if it's in a ball, that's easier. If you're frogging directly off of the sweater, that's fine as long as you're not doing color work, because then you're gonna need to like either go slowly and like hand wind the other color or whatever. I would recommend hand winding it completely if it's color work, and just like pulling them apart carefully and undoing any kind of floats that you've caught and anything like that. And so when you're winding it onto the swift, tie it to like one of the little pegs on like little, I don't know, umbrella wires on the swift, so that that doesn't move, and you can find the end, and then just, you know, spin the swift until your yarn is on the swift, like you basically reversed ball winded it. And now it's on the swift. Then you have to tie it. So you have to tie the end of the yarn to the beginning of the yarn first. I would wrap around the skein a couple times just to make sure it doesn't get tangled there, and then tie. And then you should use either, like, if there's a big chunk of like leftover yarn that didn't make it all the way around the swift, you could use that, or you could like cut lengths of other yarn, and you want to tie it in figure eights in like 3 other points around the skein so that it doesn't get tangled in the water, because I have done this and it's still gotten tangled. So be careful, because you might still tangle it. And then you just soak it for a while, dry it. The kinks should come out, because wool has memory. You can also just knit it like as the ramen noodle-y thing that you see. If you're worried, you can gauge swatch that, because those kinks will come out in the second blocking as well. So I knitted a Fair Isle vest once where I tried to knit a sweater for a while and it wasn't working out. And so I undid it, like I frogged it, and I made it into a vest. And the first part of the yarn was the yarn that I had tried to knit into the sweater. And so it was all noodly. I just used it, and I could tell, like, before I blocked the vest, I could tell that like the bottom of it, the yarn was all kinky, and then the top was like smooth yarn. But when I blocked it, the variation went away. So that will block out even if you just knit like that. So that's the answer to that question. Last question I'm going to answer today is, does the gauge in socks change if you're knitting with like non-superwash wool? So that's a really good question. And it goes back to like the first question I answered about using superwash and non-superwash yarn together. Superwash yarn tends to grow more. But I also said, if you remember, if you're knitting at a tight enough gauge, it's not really going to grow, because there's not going to really be like enough give for it to move. So I find that knitting socks on sock needles like this is superwash wool. It didn't really grow. Like it didn't. It may be a tiny little bit, like a negligible amount, but I'm pretty sure that this fit me the same before I blocked it as it does now that I've blocked it. So using non-superwash wool, I don't change my needle size at all. You may find that yours does. I would here's the thing about socks. If it's gonna grow, like it's not gonna shrink, so with blocking, unless you felt it for some reason. So I would just knit a pair of socks, same stitch count, maybe even the same pattern. One superwash pair and one non-superwash pair. Same needles. See if your gauge is different. My guess is that the most variation is going to come from actual yarn thickness. So like if one of the yarns is slightly thicker, do compare, because a lot of those superwash sock yarns, especially the 75-25 hand-dyed ones, those are super thin, and not all non-superwash sock yarns are going to be that thin. But on the other hand, I think even so, like at that tight of a gauge, like I hardly notice the difference, even if the yarn's a little thicker. If it's noticeable, like if it's a sport weight, like too cool sock or something, that's when you want to consider going up a needle size and using fewer stitches, because you're just using a bigger wool, your thicker wool. Like that's like enough that it would matter. I also had a lot of people ask me if I could show the steek, how I make a steek with a needle felting tool. I will do that at some point. I'm not going to do it today because that was too much equipment. I don't actually have a setup for filming, like other than this like silly like fake tripod thing that just like is not a tripod, it just attaches to my table. I used to have an actual tripod. There is a tripod right here. I don't know, I think it's Jordan's. It might be mine because it looks broken and mine was broken. But I don't think it like that doesn't super work either. To like, I really need like camera, like something to hold my phone like above my shoulder to show. So I'm thinking about like figuring out how to do that. I could probably have like Jordan hold the camera while I pounded a needle felt steek like on the table here. I don't know. But I will link the things you need for a needle felted steek. I actually have to do it or help my friend Monica with her needle felted steeks this week. She finished the body of her thistle cardigan from Strands of Joy, which I talked about in my last episode. And so she needs to steek the armholes and the front, especially before she cuts the armholes. She's gonna steek the armholes, pick up her stitches, and then cut them open, because that's always what I do. This is her first steek, so she's a little nervous. So I feel like I've talked about Monica so much and she's never been on this channel because she's so busy. I feel like she's like an imaginary friend. Like she's not, she's real, and we hang out all the time now that I do church music with her, but like, I'm like, yeah, everyone on this channel must think that Monica's my imaginary friend. She is real. But yeah, she's busy, but we'll make sure that we film something about her thistle cardigan, either when it's done or sometime while she's working on her steeks. But yeah, I see her all the time now because we're doing church music together. And I was wearing this to church yesterday, actually. And like all these people kept asking me about it. And I was like, they were like, that's such a cool sweater. Like, is that yours? And I was like, yes, I made it. And they were like, no, you didn't. And I was like, and I dyed the wool and I spun it into yarn. Shocking, I know. But yeah, I wear it all the time, but I don't think I wear it out of the house very often because it doesn't feel like it feels like it's like a sweatshirt almost. Like it's kind of oversized, not like super oversized, but it's like a bigger, kind of cozier piece. And like, because none of it like matches, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I should like, I don't know. It feels like kind of an informal piece. Like it's more of just like, I made this with my first hand spun and I'm going to keep it to myself. But I wore it to church and like 5 or 6 people were just like, wow. And I was like, oh, maybe it's like more of a outside piece, outside the house piece. Okay, I'm gonna shut my laptop because I'm done answering questions. So I've already showed you this FO, which is my Kitty Bennett socks using at Hanes House, Kitty Bennett colorway. It was called I Don't Cough for My Own Amusement, which is a green with little pink speckles, which I think is really fun. I didn't do a great job picking up stitches in the gusset here. As you can see, there's like a small hole there. In case anyone thinks my socks are perfect, they're not. This side's good. There's mostly, it's good. I think there's like a little bit of, yeah, that one's fine. That's an FO. I have one more FO. I hadn't even started this by the time I was filming last week, because last week I filmed on Saturday morning and then I cast this on Saturday afternoon. Because I was having a day of vocal rest, so I didn't really like see anyone until like the evening. So I cast on this sweater. So I cast on this it's done, it's wet, so that's why I'm like being careful with it. This is just a plain raglan sweater. I used the flax pattern by Tin Can Knits. It is for a child, not for an adult. I used the flax pattern by Tin Can Knits to knit the 6 to 8 size. I didn't do the garter panel on the sleeves, but otherwise it is identical. Sorry, I'm just gonna put it, let's just hold it like this. Yeah, because I do want to show you the yarn. I dyed this yarn. This sweater is for one of the girls I used to nanny, Mabel. So her older sister got a new sweater, but she didn't get it yet because I didn't make one for Mabel, so I couldn't give Clara hers. This is the one I made for Clara. I made it in the fall with yarn from my friend Catherine's mother that she passed away, and she had a bunch of yarn in her house. She was a woman from New Zealand, and so she was a knitter, and she had this yarn, and this was like a wool acrylic blend, and it was just like, get this amazing, these blended colors, like, and Clara said she wanted a sweater that looked like the sunset, and so I think that I will hopefully deliver on my promise. She's probably forgotten about it. Clara's almost 10, and Mabel is going to turn 8, and their brother Otto got a sweater. He's going to be 6 in May. He got his new sweater in October because he had so grown out of the one I made him when he was 3. Like, he was so much bigger. But the girls, I made Clara a little dress. It was like a short sleeve dress with a colorwork yoke. It was super cute. And I think she probably still fits into it. It's probably more like a tunic now. And I made Mabel a sweater that was like wool and Surrey alpaca that was all cozy. They both basically just got whatever they want. They picked out the yarn and they picked out the patterns, and Clara was like, I want mine to be a dress. I don't want a sweater. Use that sleeve yarn, make it longer. And so I did. I thought that was a cool idea. And so she got her dress. A wool dress. That's the only dress I've ever made. So the girls are getting new sweaters because they have probably at this point outgrown the ones I made them. They'll probably outgrow these, but they'll definitely outgrow these ones. And then they'll get more because I love them. So that's that. That's pretty quick. I'm just trying to make the rest of this kind of quick because I don't want this to be like a 6-hour episode. So spinning. Okay, so I didn't really work very much on this metamorphic sweater. Oh, that's a future cast on that I do want to show. But this is the metamorphic sweater that I started a couple weeks ago with so 2 different hand spun skeins. So the first one is this marled like brown and white. It's the brown is border Leicester and the white is Charolais. Wow, I should probably drink a lot of water today because I gotta sing tomorrow. This week is Ash Wednesday. I'm gonna talk about that too. So the marled colored skein looks like this, like the color changing yarn, and it is different rainbow colors of a BFL bump that I got at Rhinebeck from it was Cedarbrook Farms, which is actually really close to here. They are a mill just up in Towson or near Towson, and and then I marled that with a black and white Jacob. So actually I should go get those. So I will in a second. So this is, like, you can see it changes colors, but it's kind of sort of subtle, but not like super subtle. But anyway, I had a whole challenge to make another skein of the black and white Jacob marled with rainbow yarn to finish the sweater because I only had one. So, and the metamorphic sweater is knitted inside out. So this is actually what the sweater will look like on the other side. So it's the marled yarn is even more kind of obvious here because it's on the purl side out. So let me go get that. Okay. So I marled these 2 together. So this is black and white Jacob. It's naturally combed black and white. It's just 2 different, or probably several different sheep, and it goes through a carder or something to get it all combed together and blended. And it's, when it's spun, it's very, blendy. And then this is a mixed BFL that I dyed to try and match the Cedarbrook Farm colors. And the BFL from Cedarbrook Farm was not mixed BFL, but it was like kind of murky. So I tried to do a light hand with the dye application and do the pink and a kind of orangey, like into like yellow and then into green, because the body of this sweater uses those colors. Because the blue, there was like a green up here and an orange up here and a purple up here, but I don't need those on the sleeves. So I just wanted like a pink. I wanted an orangey and kind of yellowy, and now it's getting into green, and so, or it will at some point. So I think I'm gonna finish the body in this and then just finish the body, and it will like make the ribbing long as the pattern actually suggests. Anyway, I think I don't know where the other skein is. Oh, it's on the, here it is. This is what the other marled skein looks like. So anyway, I have, I spun one bobbin of this. This is, I had a bigger piece and I just ripped it in half lengthwise in case I needed to make 2 skeins. And then I spun it I spun one bobbin of this, and then I spun them together. And this is what it looks like. And I think this is like not too far. It's a little murkier. I think it's less bright than the first skein. But like, this was just like a random challenge that I gave myself, was like to, you know, it's like random yarns. It's not gonna totally look the same, but I don't think that's gonna be too off. I think it's gonna be kind of cool. The sleeves are gonna be a little different, but the sleeves will ideally match each other. So this might be plenty for the sleeves, because I do, you know, alternate rounds with the marled yarn, but it might not be, so I have more. I've only used half so that I could make another skein if I needed to of this guy. Here's what it looks like. I haven't washed this yet, so I can't tell you how many, like what the grist is or if it's similar. I think it's gonna spring up a little bit and be kind of similar to the other one, but yeah, lots of murky kind of rainbowy magic happening here. It's pretty cool, pretty excited. The marl is nice. I would do this more often, like use a black and white Jacob as one ply and make a kind of like moody skein with another ply of a different color or changing colors. So that's fun. That's been one project this week. I also continuing my murky gray, dyed on gray rainbow yarns. This is the gray Cheviot pound that I got, and I dyed each one a different piece of rainbow color to make a bunch of skeins. This is the green one. I spun this one on my wheel. I had spun most of them on the e-spinner, but then I had one that was kind of felted, and I did it with the wheel just to like have a little bit more force behind it. And that was fine. And so this was not felted, but the wheel was out, and I spun this at the wheel. I've not spun the next one at the wheel because the wheel needs a new drive band. It's getting a little loose. It keeps flying off. So I need a new drive band. But I have those. It's like kind of a project to tie one on. So now that I have one that like is the right length that I'm gonna take off the wheel, I can probably just use that to measure the new one, but still it's like a little bit annoying. So spinning this week, right? So I'm spinning another one of these murky rainbow pieces of Cheviot roving. It was originally gray. You can sort of see here this yellow. So this is the orange to yellow one. I have like a yellowy to green, like licheny one that's gonna go between this one and then this green one. Otherwise, still to go. I think that might be no, I have the red and then I have the yellow left still. So I've done all the cool colors. I've done the pink and red. I haven't done the red. This is the orange. It's in progress. This is the first bobbin. I do these fractally, even though they're not too variegated. Like obviously this has like a little bit of yellow, like it's like cayenne, and then I use blazing orange, so it gets a little lighter here, and then it gets into yellow like down here. So I do spin them fractally. So this one was 2 pieces. I spun the 2 pieces last night, and then this is the one single piece that I'm spinning just all across the top to the end. All these bumps were about 2 ounces ish. So I'm trying to like get down to the thickness of the singles so that when I apply them together, it's like similar-ish to spin cycle dyed in the wool, so that I can use this yarn that I'm spinning in patterns that would call for spin cycle dyed in the wool, just to make that a little easier on myself. So that's this week's spinning, which is exciting. Yeah, and I started knitting socks. Actually, I have a whole sock knit with that Polworth 3-ply that I did. So I did a 3-ply. You probably would have shown this. I would have shown it a couple weeks ago. This is a Polworth 3-ply. I would have shown the finished skein last week. This was from Nest Fiber Club, the February colorway, which was called Love Struck. So it was like red, like lighter pink, a kind of like fuchsia, like a light fuchsia, and then like a sea foamy green and like a light blue a little bit, and then like a little bit of white. And so I spun it into a 3-ply fractally, and I made my first sock with it. Now I'm working on my second sock. So this is my Catherine Moreland sock. This will be the 3rd sock that comes out this year from me, you'll see. So I'm obsessed with this. This is exactly how I was hoping it would turn out. So it looks really good with the texture because the 3-ply makes the texture bumps completely jump out of the fabric in a really nice way. And the marl fade worked well. I'm really happy with this. It really looks like Handspun, and but look, it's cohesive. It's a tight yarn. I'm knitting the smallest size, so it's like, I probably should have gone down even more. I should have gone down to like 48 stitches, but I did a 56 stitch sock and used a size 2 needle. Again, I think I could have gone down to 48, but I think that this is a tight enough gauge on the bottom of the foot. We're gonna find out. That these I will probably not be giving away. I'm thinking of doing some giveaways on my channel of some of my sock samples because I have so many from last year that I made that are already photographed, and I'm like, I should just give these away on the channel so someone can enjoy them. But we'll see, maybe if I just like get completely inundated with socks. I still have friends to whom I can give socks, so we'll see. But I'm really happy with this. And so this, now that I'm done with my Kitty Bennett samples, this is the last sample I did of my kitty sock. I'm moving on to the next one, which is Catherine Moreland. And I didn't necessarily need to do a Handspun sample of that, but I just thought this was a good pattern for the texture. And it was. I'm really happy that I made these. And then I'll have a Handspun sample in case someone wants to knit with their Handspun or see what it looks like if you knit with Handspun. And then I'm also gonna do another sample in this Jagger Spun Muslim Falls sock weight. So this is 100% wool. It came in my Woolly Thistle sock bag. You can get this at the Woolly Thistle. It is super wash. This is the colorway Chicory. I love this. It's so smooth. So I'm going to be knitting a pair of socks. I think for my friend Mike, who I told him I would knit him some socks, and so I part of it is like to show that I can knit like a sock that not the non-lace ones, especially, that were just like perfectly suitable for any gender. So I don't think Mike would wear lace socks, but he would wear textured socks. So I think that will be helpful to like see, that you can knit socks for anyone in these texture patterns, unisex. So that's my next sock. And this just flew. I mean, I cast this on like Saturday night, knitted to the spot where, actually no, I cast them on Friday. I knitted like the cuff, and then I just knitted 40 rows of the leg because I didn't know if I would like run out of yarn or something. I wouldn't have run out of yarn if I'd made the legs longer, but whatever. And then yesterday in the car on the way to church, I knitted the heel and picked up the stitches, and then I sat in a cafe and I knitted like this much more of the foot. And then I finished the foot partially at the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra concert I went to yesterday. And then I finished the toe when I got home. So this was like, seriously, like so fast. I mean, I wanted to keep going. The Handspun was so much fun to knit with. I'm probably gonna like knit some of Andrea Mowry's sock patterns with it. She uses Spin Cycle, like the Flicker and Flame socks, and what are the other ones? The Curio socks. Like I'll probably like knit some of those with my Handspun at some point, and like also maybe a commercial yarn, which will be really fun. So yeah. Yeah, that'll be fun. So, yep. That's that. Sorry, I'm just like trying to think if there's anything else I have to say. I don't think so. I didn't turn my do not disturb off, so I just got a message from one of my coworkers, but I'll deal with that. Work hasn't really started yet, so it's 8:36. I'm probably gonna go head to work now. I'm gonna make my smoothie and go to work. Yeah. Interesting. There's a lot of noises in my neighborhood. So I gotta clean all this up, and then I'm gonna go to work and work on President's Day because the students are gonna be there and they're expected to work, so am I. Solidarity. I have to go to Costco tonight because I have to drive to DC on Tuesday and Wednesday this week for church music stuff. And I need to get gas for that, and that's where the gas is. I have like half a tank, but I'm like, yeah, we're gonna fill that up before we go to DC twice in the next 3 days. And I need a bunch of stuff there. that's fun. So yeah, this week is Ash Wednesday, which means Lent is starting. So what's that noise? Maybe they're working on our roof. I don't know. I never know when they're coming to work on our roof because they work outside and they don't come in and they don't like knock on our door. But yeah, it's Ash Wednesday. So I usually give up buying yarn for Lent. I always give up buying yarn and fiber for Lent. Although I don't really buy that much anyway, so anymore because I have so much. So I will continue that practice, not suffering for it. And this year I'm going to give up complaining because I don't complain that much. I try not to, but I feel like actually like a lot of people around me complain all the time, and I'm like constantly just like inundated by complaints from students, of course, but like also just like from other people that I work with and that I live with and that I see all the time. And I am sick of it. And I think that, you know, I'm not always sick. It's like there's definitely something healthy about kvetching, but it's like at the end of the day, my job is to be a problem solver. And so instead of complaining about something, there's so many things you could complain about. But if you waste your time complaining, you're not spending that time trying to solve a problem. So you might as well solve the problem. Because like, you know, and I tell my students this all the time, it's like they're facing obstacles that they may not have control over, but regardless, if they can't change those things, they have to work around them. And it's not really worth sitting and kvetching about it if you can't change it. If you're saying the teacher is bad, no, the teacher's learning style, the teacher's teaching style doesn't match your learning style. You have to then, you're the one who has to accommodate that. That's not the teacher's job. The teacher is teaching 300 other students biology. Your job is to figure out how you will best learn biology because the teacher is not interested in catering to your individual needs. So you have to change the way that you work so that you are intaking the information in a way that is helpful for you and conducive to learning. Like that's my job, is basically to say to them, okay, like I'm so sorry to hear that. Let's find a solution. So I'm trying to do that more with my own life where I'm like, this is annoying. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't change it. So why complain? Let's just deal with it. Like, yeah, traffic sucks, but I get to go to DC and sing church music with my friends, and that is fun. So yeah, this week is Ash Wednesday, so I have to go tomorrow night, which is Tuesday. So today, if you're watching this on Tuesday, because of a rehearsal, because you got to rehearse before Ash Wednesday. So Ash Wednesday is the beginning of Lent, and it's when you get the ash on your forehead. A priest does that with their thumb and ash. It's kind of fun. And lots of somber music associated with Ash Wednesday. So we're mostly singing polyphony, which is unaccompanied, and like Renaissance polyphony. I think it's a Gabriele Mass. And so when they do what we call the imposition of ashes, so at the Episcopal Church where I go at least, which is St. Paul's K Street, it's very Anglo-Catholic. That's where I sing in DC with my friend Monica, where she's the organist. During the imposition of ashes, I think the choir goes first and gets, we call it gets ashed, get ashed, and then you sing something. And usually during the imposition of ashes at an Anglo-Catholic or Episcopal church, you would hear this piece, which I brought for a visual. Miserere mei Deus by Gregorio Allegri, who was alive in the latter part of the 16th century and the first half of the 17th century. An Italian gentleman. And this piece is very famous. You may not know that, as if you are not a musician who knows what this is from the title. Most people just call it Allegri because he didn't really write any other music that survives or is famous. But he wrote this, and he wrote it, I think, for the Sistine Chapel. There's a lot of lore that goes around Gregorio Allegri's Miserere mei Deus. So this is a setting of Psalm 51. He was Italian. Oh, there's a little note, so I can read you some of this. Basically, it is a simple work. It is a simple work. Okay, so this was written for Holy Week. It was not written for Ash Wednesday, but everyone sings it on Ash Wednesday. When I was in college, I never sang it on Ash Wednesday. This is, I'm just going to tell you, this is the piece with all the high C's. And I'm not going to sing it right now because both my roommates are asleep upstairs because they both have the day off. Basically, this was written to be sung in the Pontifical Chapel. I think that's the Sistine Chapel during Holy Week. So when they say basically it is a simple work, apparently it was embellishments, which are called abbellamenti in Italian, according to this. Embellishments were added and not written down, or not, I don't think they were written down. Maybe they were, but like they weren't given out, like the embellishments that were written, like the high C that you hear in Allegri, like that was not originally written out. That was like a embellishment that was made in the Sistine Chapel to make this like more exciting and stuff. And so it was like you were like going to get excommunicated if you copied it or something. And so Mozart, this is maybe apocryphal, but some people say that Mozart went to the Sistine Chapel when he was like a kid for Holy Week and heard this with his dad, and then he like went home and wrote a copy down, which does sound like something Mozart probably could have done because of his brain. It was very smart. There were only known to have been 3 copies before 1770, one by the emperor, held by the Emperor Leopold I, one by the King of Portugal, and one by Padre Martini. Bernie, I don't know who that is, got a hold of a copy and published it in his La Musica della Settimana Santa in 1790, and Mozart is supposed to have made a copy during an actual performance. Right, so I'm just gonna sort of explain this. There's like a 5-part section sung by a full choir, and then they alternate. So it's a psalm verse for each section. So the first verse is sung by the full choir. Second verse is just sung by like a single tenor or the men, like tenor, low voices, tenors and basses. And then the third verse is sung by a semi-chorus of 4 individuals. And that's when you hear the high C. And I will attach a video, or I'll attach a recording, but I'll also attach the funny video of the like 4 men singing this in King's College Chapel. And they were like, we don't need the boys anymore. This was an April Fool's video from like 5 or 6 years ago. And they were like, we don't need boys anymore. And one of them like sucks helium in and he sings the high part. And then you just kind of alternate, like 4, semi-chorus goes back to the tenors and basses singing a chant, and then you go back to the full choir, and then you have another verse of chant by the tenors and basses, and then you have another semi-chorus. And so there's a ton of verses. Let me see. There are 20 verses. So you're alternating continuously, and there's 5 semi-chorus verses. And so I am retired from singing the high C's, at least for now. But I have to sing in the semi-chorus. I have to sing the alto line in the semi-chorus. Monica was like, don't worry, I got a 14-year-old to sing the high C's. And I was like, good, because I haven't done that since college, and I'm never doing it again. It is really scary if you don't know. Like, you just kind of have to sing. You're singing a G, and then you have to pop up to a C and then come back down. And the top C, just like, sometimes you're like, what if I'm flat or sharp or I choke? Or it's really scary because you're the only one singing it, and you have to sing it 5 times, and you're like, well, every single time has to be good. And I never once choked during an actual performance of Allegri in church, but I choked on other things in that chapel, but I don't know, I was like, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, divine intervention happened, and I never missed one, but I've always been scared, and I'm like, I don't do it anymore. It doesn't sound as good as it did when I was 19. Or even 22. I don't think it was the last thing I sang in the Trinity Chapel, but we always had to sing it because I was a choral scholar at the chapel, in the chapel choir, and I always had to sing it during Holy Week. If Holy Week was during term time, which it wasn't always, but if it was, that was the evensong. Yeah, I think my last year of college, Easter was the second to last weekend of term, so we did one more evensong during Easter week, which was always the most fun if you got to end the term post-Easter with Howl's Te Deum Colreg, which will be sung on Easter at K Street where I am, so that'll be fun. I'm so sorry to all the non-church musicians who just have to listen to me talk about church music. I always do it at the end so you can just like go away. But anyway, thanks for sticking with me for 100 episodes. Maybe you've been here since the beginning, maybe you haven't, but regardless, I'm very grateful that you're here. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next 100 episodes. So I'm gonna go to work, and then I'm gonna sing a lot of church music this week and hopefully not lose my voice, because I got 4 calls this week. That's a lot, because I got Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 2 on Sunday. So hopefully I have a voice to record next weekend or next Monday. But regardless, thank you so much for watching and going on this crazy journey with me. This is probably like well over an hour. This will probably make my longest episode ever, but I don't know because I've broken it up into so many pieces. So I'm gonna go to work and upload this and then deal with the show notes. And thank you for watching. This has been Tiny Desk Knitting with Emma. Bye.